Happy Monday, everybody. It's back to work, back to school for all the kids out there, and unfortunately they're being greeted by some nasty weather, guys. It's rainy here in Charlotte, but it's a lot worse just a few miles north.
Yep. And kind of back to the reality of January in the Carolinas. In fact, we'll take a view. We'll take our camera up to the mountains, up to downtown Blowing Rock, and this is the weather picture up there. Not a pretty sight to see up there, even though they still have the lights from Christmas out there. On the streets in that area, that's really a little bit of everything. There's snow, there's freezing rain, a little bit of sleet mixed in, and that is all a glaze of ice right there. Because those temperatures all morning in that area have been around 30, 32 degrees. Kind of pan the camera around there. This is downtown Blowing Rock, and that's the weather situation there, and will continue throughout the day in Blowing Rock. And another view, take you over to Boone, just down the street, and once again, not a lot of traffic. We can see some of the cars going slowly there. Be careful because once again, especially right there on the sides of the road, there's a lot of frozen precipitation. As we take a look and show you the weather alerts that we have right now, we do have that winter storm warning still in effect for the mountains. That's all the way until 1 o'clock this afternoon. They're going to get maybe up to 1/4 inch to 3/10 of an inch of glaze, that freezing rain, that ice across areas. And then the winter weather advisory has been extended till 10 this morning, and that would include all areas in the foothills and areas from, say, around Morganton to Hickory to Statesville over to Salisbury, the north, all the way up to the Virginia border. As far as the amounts of glaze that accumulated from ice, and once again, that's freezing rain up to 3/10 of an inch in the Boone area, in fact, for the entire mountain communities. And that does include areas around Lenoir over towards Morganton, and then once you get down towards Hickory, in that area to Lincoln up to Statesville, about 2/10 of an inch is a definite possibility. The other impact in the mountains today, the amount of high winds that are going to get during the afternoon. In fact, there's a wind advisory from 3 p.m. today to 6 a.m. tomorrow, and that's for all those mountain communities. They can see winds gusting well over 55 to 60 miles an hour. Notice this, 6 p.m. this evening, winds could gust up to 60 miles an hour at Boone, 71 mile an hour wind gusts around 8 p.m. this evening in Boone. So that's another major impact today in the mountains. It could cause a lot of power outages with the amount of ice that they've already seen. As we take a look and show you icy conditions, that area of pink right there does include Maiden, does include Lincoln, and all the way up into the mountain communities. For the Charlotte area, we're just talking about some light rainfall here. We expand the view and show you rain from Charlotte to Albemarle to Wadesboro, all the way down into South Carolina. Then north of here, once you get to the mountain communities, a lot of icy conditions up there around Ashe County and Avery County in that area. That's a major ice issue up there. And then you go north into areas in the mid-Atlantic states. We're talking a major winter storm system up there. So we have rain. Here's we take a look at futurecast all the way to 9 a.m. More rain showers here, and then everything is out of here until we get to the mountains later this afternoon through the evening. And then overnight tonight, we're talking about a significant amount of snowfall. Some of those ski slope areas could get as much as 3 to 5 inches of snow for us locally. We're weather aware this morning, and then we got dry weather Tuesday and Wednesday. What about all this precipitation? It comes in many forms, especially when you get some rain falling into a cold atmosphere. Here's Chris.
Hey, thanks a lot, Larry. Well, you know we're always trying to raise your weather IQ right here on WCNC. So pink here on the radar literally is a mixed bag of everything. And what we've seen this morning is actually through parts of Virginia, you're looking at a difference of some very heavy rain falling as freezing rain or very heavy snow in the northern part of Virginia that I've seen some reports of over a ½ inch of ice. And I'll tell you what those impacts look like coming up here shortly. But here is the mixed bag of precipitation that you can have in the area of pink. Either graupel. So graupel is just really almost like a soft hailstone. That happens when you have a snowflake that picks up pretty much a bunch of other tiny snowflakes around it. So it's very soft hail. But the sleet, snow, and freezing rain are the main three. Sleet literally is just a tiny little ice pellet about the size of a BB. And snowflakes, we all know what that looks like, especially when it's magnified, but freezing rain is the most treacherous. Now, of course, the surface temperature needs to be 32 degrees at the surface for that to happen. For there to be snow, it's not just about what's happening here on the surface, it's what's happening above 10,000 feet, so a few miles up into the atmosphere. When it's all 32 degrees, you're talking about all snow, and then depending on how cold that is at certain levels can also change the structure of the snowflake. But there's also something called the warm nose. Often meteorologists look at what's called upper air sounding. So this literally is showing a red line of what happens up in the atmosphere. When everything's below freezing, it's falling as snow. But whenever you have a chance for temperatures to be above freezing, that often happens. It's called warm air advection about 5,000 to 10,000 feet up. That's where you have the changeover. And this warm air advection can either be thin or it can be wide. Whenever you have a wider depth, about 8,000 feet, that allows that snow to fully melt in what's called a supercooled droplet. Once it falls back into a freezing atmosphere, that's where you have widespread freezing rain. Of course, the further you are away from 32 degrees down into the 20s, the more freezing rain that you're going to see. Now, sleet is a little bit shallower. So what happens here is you have a snowflake that partially melts. But then once it falls back into freezing temperatures, it re-solidifies. So that's why you have a little ice pellet instead of a snowflake or all freezing rain. So the current case and scenario that we mainly have in North Carolina up into Virginia is this one right here, and that's why we've seen such widespread freezing rain. What about the ice impacts that happens here? Whenever you have up to about 1/10 of an inch, well, it's just a nuisance. You have a light glaze, and that's going to be on power lines, slick spots all over the place, and then that's where you might be surprised by slipping onto your derriere as you're walking on the sidewalk. Once you get up to about 1/4 inch, that's where things really become problematic. That's where you have a full coating on cars and windshields. It's extra dangerous, especially on bridges, and we'll get to that in a second. But then trees and power lines start to fail. Whenever you get to this level, that's where you could have some power lines start to snap. Once you get to about a 1/2 inch, this is crippling. This is where we have massive power outages, where power could be out for days. And I think that's going to be a possibility in certain parts of Virginia. Luckily, the event is going to be ending here soon, but roads are completely impassable. You'd much rather have 6 inches of snow than a 1/2 inch of ice because you literally can't drive. It's an ice skating rink in certain areas. Luckily, we didn't have that case and scenario, but it's always the bridges and the overpasses that are the worst situation during this event. The reason why? Well, you have a double threat to freeze. On a road, it's just the top. But on, say, over a bridge or an overpass, you have that cooling potential on either side. And that allows the heat to escape more, and that's where temperatures can easily drop down. So it might be, say, the mid to the upper 30s on a road surface that isn't a bridge or overpass, but then meanwhile, you could have a big freeze right around 30 degrees on some of those overpasses. And I think that we are seeing that. We did have reports in Alexander County the temperatures were much cooler. So where we're at right now for that rain snow line, by the way, this is recorded officially just after 7:30, 7:37 to be precise. Here's the actual line between the rain and the ice. This is all technically the rain snow line. It can be thick, it can be thin. Whenever you're at 32 degrees, that's still enough. Whenever it's about 30, 29, which we did have at one point in some local areas that were reporting that, that's where the ice was really coming down. But freezing rain is also a self-deprecating factor. Well, what does that mean? That means it actually limits itself, and I'm going to explain in more technical terms, but I'll try to make it as simplistic as possible. It's called latent heat release. So simply put, whenever you are having a water molecule freeze, it actually has to release heat back into the atmosphere. Mother Nature is all about equilibrium, and it tries to even itself out. So as it's freezing, it kind of gives the heat back. The more and more of this you see, the more freezing rain that happens, well, that actually releases more heat. So that eventually allows 32 to change over to 33 to 34, and that's actually actively what we're dealing with right now. So we're right on that cusp, exactly at 32 degrees, but the longer this goes on, the less likely you're going to have freezing rain, then it just changes over to a miserable just rain. However, as Larry was mentioning, the areas up in the mountains, this event won't be over anytime soon. They're still going to be looking over change over to snow, so certainly the higher elevations are pretty much deal with everything from ice to snow and then the winds on top of that.
Joy jumping in here online saying ice is the worst. It certainly is. Joy, thanks for watching us this morning. You gave a great just sort of description of what we can expect. We know those bridges can ice first. You just want to be safe in these conditions.
Take a look at this radar picture across the eastern part of the United States. That area blue up there, mid-Atlantic states, that takes you all the way anywhere from Alexandria, Virginia, up towards Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland. That is an ice storm. Major issues up there. So you have travel plans to Washington, D.C. and that area. And then north of there, that's all snow, anywhere from, say, parts of Pennsylvania, New York, all the way back into the midsection of the country. And from Virginia, the western part of Virginia, you got ice all the way down the mountains in North Carolina. Then it's just a cold rain here in the Charlotte area. So the eastern part of the United States is a messy weather situation. 57 million people affected by this winter storm system across the nation.
And if you look really closely, so the area of blue, see the little oranges that are in there? So that's what is the enhanced snowfall. So I made this. Whenever you have the orange, that's representing 2 inches of snow per hour. So that really just shows how heavy that snow is falling in the northern part of Virginia. Meanwhile, areas south, I saw upwards to about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of ice, and that's what could bring down some power. So you just have Virginia's an absolutely mess from north to south.
I was going to say, if you have travel plans heading to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore, Maryland, Maryland. Could be some major impacts. In fact, most of the East Coast could be problematic today traveling.
Let me just brag on you guys for a second, because I can tell you, you will not find a more comprehensive forecast for us here in Charlotte, whether it's the actual forecast, whether it's the traffic impacts, whether it's the science behind the forecast, than what you just heard in the last 10 minutes. And we can't even get all that on broadcast because we have commercial breaks and we have other news. The fact that we were able to just do this is why we'd love to bring this digital show to you, because we can get that sort of depth and granularity to the forecast and what your face as you head out the door. So
granularity, love that.
There you go.
A meteorological term thrown in.
Word of the day.
I try to keep up with you two. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. All right, folks, we'll see you back here tomorrow.